What is time and how does it work? For centuries, humans have tried to figure out this ongoing question with science, math, even philosophy, but to no prevail.
Freeze. Time is the most valuable resource we have. Most of us will only get 80 years of it. Fast forward. To try to explain time through the different dimensions, first take a point. This is a zeroth dimension. It has no relative mass or size. But take a point outside of this and form a line, you get the first dimension. A point outside of that would make a plane, the second, and so on to the third dimension. Over here, we have an excellent representation of the third dimension.
This is an ordinary person. He represents a three-dimensional event. As he walks across the field, he moves through the four-dimensional substance of time. But what if he were to change direction? The possible directions he could take represent the fifth dimension in time. Another way of showing this is with math. But how do we do that? With a whiteboard, of course. The initial three dimensions are fairly straightforward. They easily demonstrate the principle that as long as a point can be found outside of the previous dimension, a new dimension can be formed. The best way to find a point outside of the third dimension would be through the fourth dimension of time. As we demonstrated earlier, a man walks through the fourth dimension with the opportunity to split paths into the fifth dimension. How do we explain the sixth dimension? What if there were a point outside of the man's timeline where he did not exist? This would go outside of the fifth dimensional time plane, ergo, a sixth dimension. Let's take a point, but not just any point. The first point in our universal timeline, the creation of the universe. Just as there are an infinite number of ways the universe could end up, there are an infinite amount of ways it could start. But what if there were a parallel universe outside of our own? This would be the multiverse. Of course, this would lead to a multitude of different dimensions. The point is, it is very possible for other dimensions far beyond our four, the four that we perceive, to exist.
As I previously explained, scientists, philosophers, and mathematicians have all tried to understand how time works, including people like Einstein with his theory of relativity, and Gabriele Veneziano with his revolutionary string theory. But we don't really have time to explain the...
Actually, there is a very simple way to explain what string theory actually is. Why is it called string theory? The answer is a lot more simple than you might think. String theory suggests that everything in the universe, down to the smallest particles, are made of tiny one-dimensional vibrating strings. You can think of them as notes in that they vibrate in a bunch of different frequencies. But they vibrate in so many different frequencies and so many different directions that they can't be contained by the simple three dimensions that we commonly perceive.
It is amazing to think that we could live in just a small part of a set of higher dimensions, and that, if one day we prove these dimensions exist, we could prove a theory that would explain everything in the universe. I've always wondered how things work around me. The important thing is to find out which things to go after, and keep going after them wherever they may lead.